kind of summed it up. Katie Webster, she's an instructor at Union Pleasant, and she says kids learn things in health class they don't learn anywhere else. So, yeah.
Yeah, in closing, folks, we would like to discuss with you our upcoming Hamburg Community Health and Wellness Fair. In the fall, we decided it was definitely a time to get this effort going. And the goal of our Community Wellness Fair is to increase awareness of healthy lifestyle choices and wellness resources that are available to our students, our staff, and our community. It's going to be held in the high school gym, and we're on Thursday, April 26th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., and then again Friday, April 27th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Every high school student will attend the wellness fair during either health and or physical education class. We added the evening on Thursday so that folks from the community that are working can come on down and join us for all the wonderful things we're going to have going. Currently, we're in the process of inviting many organizations to join us. They include the American Red Cross, American Heart Association, American Cancer Society, many of the local colleges that offer health types of majors for our students to pursue, and a whole bunch of health specialists, nutritionists, therapists, doctors, physical fitness specialists. So we've got a whole lot of people that have been invited. We're in the process of getting their confirmation back, and we're really excited about this event. For the board members and Mr. Akramovich and Mr. Jeter, we have, Dr. Jeter, we have invitations for you guys, and I think my colleague here has little goodies.
Couldn't let Valentine's go without chocolate.
I'm sure it's healthy chocolate, though, right?
Absolutely.
Dark chocolate, yeah.
Just go with it.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it.
You'll be here.
I'll just,
Now, Mr. I didn't know you were going to be here today, but you are invited, so I'm sorry we don't have anything.
We'll make sure he gets in.
Everybody's invited, okay? Well, we thank you for your time tonight, and if anybody has any questions about our health education program, we'd certainly be more than happy to answer them.
I have a couple questions, actually. Mrs. Gallagher was presenting, she teaches, well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you, and you teach at all the elementary, so
Every elementary.
what, and you don't, there is no health for 8th grade?
No.
At all? No health classes? And you teach, so what grades are we offering health formally? So I know 6th grade, okay?
K to 5,
Yeah, but
6.
you're one person, so do you teach the teachers to teach the kids, or do you go into each of the
I go
classes?
to every single classroom, okay, depending on the unit, the units have so many days of instruction. So I go into every classroom, schedule my schedule with the home teacher to fit in with their schedule. But, yes, so.
You're still one person,
One
so you
person.
get maybe one day in each class in the district for
One day to class?
one, I mean,
No.
so if you're talking kindergarten, first, second, third, so there's
Fourth,
5 or 6 kindergartens
Let me just
in-
say this, in 5th grade, with every 5th grade teacher in classroom, I am in there at least 36 days of instruction. 4th grade, there's 34 days of instruction. And in 3rd, it goes down, okay? So that the smaller the level, kindergarten first, the
less time.
less time. It's like, again, it's building block and more units and more emphasis on the units. So, yeah, so I believe that we're close to almost 1,700 students in our district. That's how many I teach in elementary.
She's busy.
And so no formal in 8th grade, and then 11th and 12th, they can
Not-
take elective,
They take,
correct?
9th and 10th, they take the 9-10 health program.
And that's required.
And then the life skills is required during the junior and senior year. And then there's the 2 electives that they can sign
they
up
can
for.
choose for them.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Any other
very much
questions?
for allowing us.
Yeah,
Nice job. Thank you very much.
Anybody that would like to join us, please have them contact me via email, because we're still in that process, yes. Great, thanks. Okay. Thank you, folks.
pull it together.
We have another presentation, so go through the policy and then do the budget, okay?
Okay. Next, we're gonna be discussing the, actually, remind me, this is the first reading of this?
Correct.
First reading of the energy conservation policy.
Again, this is the first reading. This goes along with our energy education program. This is a recommendation that came through from Erie One BOCES that we initiate this along with a grant that they are pursuing as well. The grant that they are pursuing is to put into sleep mode all of the computers at Erie One that we purchased through Erie One BOCES. So it is an energy savings matter. But this is step one. Again, as a first read, it's just on the agenda tonight for your information. If you have any questions or suggestions for modifications between now and our March meeting, please let us know, and it will be on the March meeting for a formal approval.
And this is to supplement our other established energy
Yes,
programs.
that's it.
So is this different than like turning the lights on at 7:30 in the buildings?
Well, that is, the turning the lights on is a specific, I guess, part of the energy education program. This is more general. It talks about things that we should do in terms of our heating and ventilation systems. It talks about indoor temperature, et cetera. So it doesn't give specifics as the energy education does, but it gives a more general outlook.
Okay.
Okay?
Let's move on next to the budget discussion.
Yes. Give this to Barb, and I'll pull down the screen. Barb and I are going to review some budget information with the board. Last Thursday, we had a meeting district-wide where we presented some information to all staff. This will be somewhat repetitive of that, but what we've done that the board hasn't seen here up to this point is included information of potential areas of reduction and the impact that those reductions will have on the district. Barb will take us through some financial information to begin with, and then I'll review the information regarding reductions. Barb, if you would.
Sure.
Just a quick overview of our agenda of this presentation. We're going to take a look again, budget levy, our state aid history. We're going to talk a little bit about the tax levy limit, where we are now. That's as far as I'll go with the presentation. Then the superintendent is going to take us through challenges, enrollment, staffing, preliminary budget maintaining of all programs and services, and a budget reduction draft 1 and draft 2. Excuse me. This is just a budget analysis. Some of the board members may have seen a piece of this in the past. It's always a good idea to try to take a look at where we've been to gauge how we're going forward. Right now, our rollover budget, if we were to keep everything in place and go through the natural progression of raises and other costs associated with the rollover budget, our budget would go up approximately $2.5 million, or 4.37%. Associated with that would be the levy analysis. Our rollover budget would produce a levy increase in the neighborhood of 11.24%, going up just a little bit over $3.4 million to $33,899,910. One of the other things we also like to try to keep a look at and review our history of is our state aid. You can see our state aid was increasing with the Advent Foundation aid. It was supposed to increase in a certain manner over 3 fiscal years. That did follow suit through 08-09, and then with the advent of the crisis in New York State, our state aid began to be reduced. It was offset by other increases in ARRA money and other types of aid, education, jobs fund monies, but those have all gone away with the upcoming fiscal year. So you can see, even though we do see a little bit of an increase in our projected 12-13 aid from our current fiscal year. That's due to reimbursement aids, as we've discussed. Our foundation aid has remained identical to what we received this year. So the $476,317 really is an increase in reimbursement aids from cost from the previous fiscal year. Our annual budget analysis, you can see that the budget over fiscal years from 06-07 through projected 12-13, it's gone from 48 million to upwards of 59 million. Our tax levy is also increased respectively over the years. Our state aid is kind of across the board, increasing and then decreasing. And our other is remaining relatively constant. At this point, in our next budget meeting, we will go over a much more detailed look at our projected revenues. For this presentation, the other revenues, which is pretty much everything short of state aid and fund balance, is holding its own at about $6.1 million. I know everybody cringes when they see this. We've discussed it before, so I won't suffer you all through and go through line by line, but this is again our calculation for the tax levy limit in words. So it's always helpful, I think, to have this to go along with the numerical calculation, which is on the next slide. This is what we expect our tax levy limitation to be, which is sent to the state no later than March 1st. I don't want to say it's our final levy limitation calculation, but I think it is. There's still a few outstanding pieces of the puzzle that the state has not provided to us. Most of that is in the area of what are considered exclusions or exemptions after we calculate the adjusted levy and then the tax levy limitation. So I believe this is going to be the proper number for the actual initial tax levy limitation. However, we're still giving ourselves a little bit of room for adjustment if there's any changes in the next 2 weeks. But basically, we're taking our current levy, which is $30,474,628, multiplying it times the tax base growth factor, which is the number that was provided to us. Adding in the current year pilots, we have an exact number now. Before, we had a number that had been used for budgetary purposes, but this is the exact amount of revenue that we did collect this year from our pilots, payments in lieu of taxes. That brings us to $30,785,631. Then we have to subtract off our current year exemptions. These are certain exemptions in the capital budget, equipment costs, net building aid, debt service that we did not receive payment from the state on. We take our adjusted current levy and then we multiply it times the allowable growth factor, which is the amazing number of 2% that everybody's heard about. This is where they get the 2% tax limitation number from. It's CPI or 2%, whichever is less. So this year it will be 2%. We multiply the adjusted levy by the 2%. We get our $31,039,258. And now we have to subtract out our estimated current year pilots, or excuse me, our estimated upcoming year pilots. We don't know the number on that yet. We could get relatively close, but that information is not available from the assessors yet. So we're estimating with what we know. We're considering it to be $121,901 that we then have to subtract off. And it would appear that this number, the $30,917,357, is our tax levy limitation before exclusions. That would be what we submit to the state. Like I said, we're still waiting for some, and I've said this every meeting, so I feel very redundant. The state has come out with some additional information regarding the exclusions, but there's still a little bit of discussion over 2 remaining factors. So that number will be added on after the fact. So it doesn't affect what we submit to the state on March 1st. The number we submit by March 1st is the adjusted current year levy limit. like I said, we're still waiting for some guidance. I fell a little behind in keeping up with my slides. The net debt service we know, the net equipment number we know, but one of the arguments out there is, will the teacher's retirement money above 2% be considered part of our exclusion? It depends on what years you compare, and that's really where the disagreement lies. If you compare 11-12 teachers' retirement increase to the 12-13, it is in excess, it is not in excess of 2%. If you compare 10-11 to 11-12, that number is in excess of 2%, and we would have some dollars to exclude in the way of retirement. I think it's gonna end up that there won't be any TRS to exclude. To me, it only makes good sense that you would compare current year to the upcoming year, because that's where your cost is going to be. So I believe that's the way it's going to pan out. There's still a little bit of disagreement over which 2 years are comparable. So we could potentially have more exemptions that are excluded from the levy. And now the superintendent will take it from here and we'll discuss some of the challenges that we're facing.
Thanks, Barb.
Sure.
One of the things I just wanted to highlight is, this year we've talked about budget difficulties. And typically we've always talked about the difficulty from a fiscal standpoint in terms of the challenge between the expenditure increases versus our revenues. This year it's become much more complex in terms of how we're looking at the budget, given the limitations on revenue, both from our local sources as well as from the state. When Barb went through the 2008-9 state aid proposal, you saw a significant increase in state aid, $2 million. That's when the governor put in the foundation formula and started upping money to education. And that lasted only 1 year, but the formula was generated to drive money to districts in need, and that's why we saw a pretty good increase. What's happening now is they haven't reversed the process like they gave it away. They have changed how they've taken money away. So you saw some significant decreases that we faced. And now we're in another situation where we're looking at some state aid increases coming back to us, but it's not following the foundation aid formula. It's following the old shares formula, which typically drives more money to a New York City into the downstate districts. So there's a lot of things going on that are impacting how we're looking at the revenue picture. The other piece to keep in mind that we're lobbying for is that the governor has set aside in his budget $250 million for competitive grants and state aid. One of the areas that we're pushing for as districts, as associations, is the reinstatement of that money into the general formula so that all districts will benefit from additional state aid. At a recent breakfast, we've been told that that is under consideration. But that will help to drive more money to the school districts. And then as we're working through additional state aid coming to districts in the future, it's going to also be important to take a look at how that distribution mechanism is going to be put in place so that we're going to make sure that the fair share comes to upstate districts as well. Oops. We're looking at some assumptions in the current budget in terms of how we're putting our expenditure budget together. And first of all, from a revenue standpoint, the state aid, as you saw, about $475,000 increase. The aid formulas for expense-driven costs are remaining the same this year. That has been something that's been discussed in terms of changing in the future. The most impact is transportation and capital aid or building aid. The jobs fund was significant this year. It is the final year of federal funding that we're losing, $1,168,000. That is all in personnel costs for us. And the sales tax is remaining the same. We see salary increases, TRS, ERS increases, health insurance, BOCES, as well as special education. Those are expense-driven factors that are really driving up the cost of the budget. You see here the comparison. We've talked about our rollover deficit budget of about $3.5 million. We're looking at the allowable levy. We're trying to go through a scenario that's going to give a projection of what we need to raise locally in order to maintain the current budget. When you see the bottom part there, total tax levy needed to close the total deficit, $33 million, it's almost $33.9 million. That's significantly above our limit cap, our tax levy limit. So part of our exercise right now is taking a look at how do we bridge the gap between the revenue and expenditure budget with a very limited increase in state aid, and as well as a limited increase in terms of what we can do locally. Some of the other actions we've talked about previously in terms of controlling our spending over the years, the Health Insurance Consortium is through Erie One BOCES. That's limited the increases over the course of many years that we've been in that program. I think it's 4 years right now. A Liability Insurance Consortium that helps keep insurance premiums lower. The Energy Education Program, refinancing the capital improvement bonds, that's on our agenda tonight to save money. We froze our budget in November this year, the earliest that we've ever done that, to try to save funding. Cooperative utility purchasing, workers' comp consortium, and again, we've just finalized and we submitted last week under Greg Davis's facilitation the application of a school improvement grant of $1.8 million over 3 years that's distributed in $600,000 a year. That would be significant for us in terms of staffing numbers and just revenue coming into the district if that's achieved. Again, it is something we'll have to plan for that 3-year period of time because it will expire at the end of 3 years. And again, that would be a loss of $600, but it is significant in terms of driving what we need to drive at this point for revenue. The budget modifications we're going to show you that number is a little bit low. It's about 1.5 million right now that we'll take you through. Here is the criteria. Part of it, and we've looked at this previously, is just enrollment driven. We are seeing a slight decline in enrollment. We're looking at some reduction in staff due to a declining enrollment that would occur regardless of the status of our budget. Changes driven by program needs and service needs. We've heard from the health department today in terms of some of the program and service issues that they're looking at. We've had our finance academy, we've had presentation through the art department. So we see changes that our programs are going through, which are very positive changes that we need to make some decisions on in terms of whether or not we're going to increase our budget to accommodate some of those requirements. The degree of impact of the program or services reduction on students is what we're trying to measure as well. Measuring the property tax cap, the deliberations from our union presidents, the Board of Education, and the budget ambassadors, as well as the requirements coming through the reform agenda, which are significant at this point, regardless of where you turn, whether it's the evaluation piece, whether it's the curriculum part, student learning objectives. There's significant requirements for us to have with deadlines associated with them to be submitted to the State Education Department. So we've looked at this criteria to continue with the budget gap, our impact on future budgets. It's going to be critical for us not only to look to 12-13, but also 13-14, 14-15, etc. The revenue limitations are significant. Our expenditures continue to outpace the revenues that we can achieve at the local level with the 2% cap on us. As we're looking through, and you've seen these numbers, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the elementary numbers, but you've seen the enrollment numbers, you've seen where we've changed. The most difficult area to predict is kindergarten. We're looking at 259 students coming in for next year. That's an increase of about 17 over this year. That is one of the most difficult to project. Part of what we do in certain circumstances, if our numbers are close to the cap, we may put it over the cap for the time being, and then if those kids show up in September, not in September, but in August, if our registration proves that the students are there, then we can increase the staff to accommodate the need at that particular point in time. But you see an overall decrease at the elementary level of 39 students projected. When we're looking at our staffing, based on the current guidelines in terms of class size, where we have kindergarten on average less than or equal to 20, and grades 1 through 5 on average less than or equal to 24. If we just rolled over that staff, you would find a reduction of approximately 4.5 teachers based on just current conditions existing next year because of the enrollment decline based on those averages there. If we look at, and again, our attempt is trying to close that $3.5 million budget gap, if we look at increasing the class size slightly, kindergarten and first grade on average would be less than or equal to 22, and grades 2 through 5 on average would be less than or equal to 25. With that, you see the reductions that can occur at each grade level, and that would be a reduction of approximately 9.5 teachers at the elementary level. Again, what's associated with 2 of those positions is a higher kindergarten number than the average there of 22. So we would have to be prepared to add 2 FTEs back in there if those students are actually registered come August. When we look at the middle school enrollment, we see a change with a big 5th grade class turning over from this year into 6th grade next year. So you see an increase of 43 students at that level. The remaining levels are approximately the same, so we have an increase of 40 teachers at the middle school. Preliminarily, we've looked at grade 6, moving from 11 teachers to 12 teachers because of that class size coming in. With the 12 teachers, the class size on average is approximately 25 students per class. We're also looking at a reduction of 1 core team at the middle school. Currently, they have 6 core teams, which is English, Social Studies, Math, and Science. That is 3 per grade level. We're looking at creating a split team, so we'd have 2.5 teams at each level. Again, that is a change. It does increase class size, but again, dealing with a $3.5 million budget gap, we have to look at where we can make some reductions and limit some of the impact. The impact is going to be on class size there. The high school will be losing approximately 27 students by projections. Again, last year, keep in mind, they had a large 9th grade class come in. As you look at it on a long-term basis with a large 6th grade class, we're going to have that turn over to the high school in the future. So it's important to take a look at these numbers on a long-term basis as well and see where our impact's going to be. The high school staffing, approximately 86 teachers in general ed, 13.6 in special ed for 99.4 total. We're looking at a reduction of 5.0 FTE in the general education staffing at the high school. That reduction to be recommended by the high school administration to us. We are studying where, and part of the process with the high school, keep in mind, is to look at where students are looking to take courses, what electives, et cetera, are gaining enrollment. So part of this process will include that analysis of where kids are looking to register their classes for next year. As we go through, right now we're going to look at some specific areas of reduction, the dollar amount that's being reduced, and then an impact statement that takes place there. And the first one is a certification service that we have through BOCES. Typically it's BOCES that has the ability to deal with the state education department. Sometimes they can get answers quicker than we can. This reduction of $6,000 would eliminate that service, and we would rely more on the state education department. Communication between the district and the state education department would increase there. Short term, I don't believe that there are going to be that many certification issues. If we look at this on a longer term aspect and revenue streams start to get better, that may be a service that we want to reinstate based on what it can help our teachers with. The Video Project Connect is a long distance piece that we have at Boston Valley. That is basically upkeep that we have for that system. We are not going to continue that. Safety risk management, we have a person in district from BOCES, approximately 1 day per week. We are going to move that to a half day per week. Again, we'll rely on district personnel to perform some of those duties, but some of those duties are important for us to have in terms of right to know, the data sheets, etc. We're also looking at a BOCES printing service that we have that's not really being utilized, of approximately $1,500 to be reduced. A behavior management consultant to reduce those services by 0.5 with a savings of $11,450. Again, we would use that consultant for our most critical cases, create a district team to work on other cases so that we're not missing out on any behavior management issues. The other part we're looking at from a special ed standpoint with BOCES is to review where our services are placed with BOCES. If there is any area where we can bring students back to the district, serve the needs of those students in our own district, which our assumption is it would be for a lesser cost. We're reviewing that to see if we can do that. In terms of now moving to staff reductions within the district, we're looking at facilities with 4.0 FTE. We're looking at 2 cleaners, 1 laborer, and 1 maintenance mechanic. It's one of the things to note when we're looking at our maintenance, our clerical, our teacher aides. Those are all governed by civil service rules as well. So part of what we're going to have to do is not only go by our contract, but go by the requirements of civil service in terms of those reductions. Mainly that's a seniority and a bumping issue that we'll have in those classifications. In terms of classroom teachers, as we've talked about through the reduction of the enrollment, the increase of the guidelines slightly, there is an approximate savings of 10.0 FTE. We're using a figure of $55,000 as a savings per teacher when we look at a savings on that. So the projected savings there would be approximately $550,000. At the middle school, again, we've reduced it by a team, so that was a 4.0 reduction for grade 7 and 8, but if you recall, we increased grade 6 by 1, so it's a net reduction of 3.0 FTE at the middle school. At the high school, we're looking at 5.0 FTEs for a savings of approximately $275,000. You see the impact statement there, reduction of electives, elimination of enrollment classes, and higher class sizes. From a teacher aide standpoint, a reduction of 6 aides at the elementary level. The middle school level would remain the same, however, there would be an increase due to special education needs at the high school of 2.0 FTE. So it would be a net reduction of teacher aides of 4.0 FTE. We are using a $20,000 salary and benefit calculation for the aide reduction. Under clerical, we're looking at an approximate 6.0 FTE reduction in clerical staff. This would require reconfiguration of duties and schedules for buildings and department coverage. Again, civil service rules play an important part in this, so we are looking at how we're working through those reductions, and we'll also utilize the retirements in these areas where possible. We've also looked at a reconfiguration in central office. Mr. Davis is retiring this year at the end of the year. We're looking at a title change, we're looking at a reduction in time and a possible sharing of this position with another district through BOCES. They do have a shared service for this central office position. As you recall, we had a retirement incentive that did not achieve the number of retirees. That incentive is no longer in place because it calls for itself to be not continued if we didn't receive get the 15 required teachers. We have an unknown impact on that incentive if negotiations continue. Barb will be reviewing the bond refunding resolution with you this evening. We're looking at a possible savings of about $100,000 through that refunding of current bonds at a lower interest rate. On athletics, we've asked Greg Whitman to review an approximate 10% reduction in his budget, which is equivalent to about $45,000. Greg is going through the process of looking at where those reductions can take place. Further reductions that we've made from a central office standpoint, the photographer that we have on staff would be a $35,000 savings that would be reduced. We'd be looking at reduction again, another year of reductions at the extracurricular activities in the high school and middle school, a total reduction of $20,000 between the buildings. From a special education in-district staff, we're looking at the possibility of a 1.0 FTE reduction, and that is looking at our self-contained classroom enrollment and looking at if a consolidation can occur where appropriate. Again, that is not a given at this point, but we are studying that issue. The other part from a transportation perspective we're looking at is the potential elimination of a late run, either the 5:30 or the 4, I believe it's a 4 p.m. late run. Look at we're studying right now the impact on students. It appears as if the 4 p.m. run has a higher number of students that we take than the 5:30 run. But we are looking at the consolidation of that run or the elimination of that 5:30 run and getting a estimated reduction from Fisher at this point. So district-wide, when we're looking at these reductions, we're looking at, and you can see if it's staff reductions listed under teachers or administrators at the elementary, middle, and high district-wide, we have support staff reductions, and then we have an estimated savings based on those reductions or a reduction in cost. So you can see the total savings at this point where we're at is approximately $1.5 million, just slightly over that. Keep in mind the budget gap is down to about $3 million now after the state aid came in from the governor's proposal that we're using. So based on that, we still have a continued budget gap of about $1.5 million. But this is kind of scenario one. Part of what we want to do at this point is, again, as Barb mentioned, the levy calculation, more guidance is necessary. That is coming through the controller's office. We expect to have a fairly firm number for you, or we should have a fairly firm number for you on February 28th at our budget session. That will give us a better picture in terms of what the actual gap is. We expect it to be reduced from the $1.5 million, but we need to see where our revenue stream is going in terms of the maximum cap limit and how we're going to set that forth in our budget. So you can see we've gone through again, and we're making the adjustments in terms of the dollars, the adjustment on the tax levy. Again, on the 28th, we'll have better numbers for you. Some issues we've studied, we'll continue to take a look at the impact and whether or not we move in the direction of an 8-period day versus a 9-period day at both the middle and the high school. We're looking at special subjects, special area subjects at the elementary and middle school to see if a reduction can be made based on the reduction in teachers through, if you remember the elementary, about 10 teachers that are leaving. Whether or not we can look at some of these special areas to be reduced as well because there's not as many classes going into those areas. We're reviewing our substitute costs and seeing where we can cut back on substitutes to generate some savings, and also our technology budget. Not only from the standpoint in terms of savings through technology, but I think we have to look at the technology from also, if we do invest in technology, can there be potential savings in certain areas because of our investment? You know, we've talked about with the board a program, the one called Board Docs, so that we're more of an online type of situation in eliminating paper. Those parts we're going to continue to investigate. Again, I believe that those are more long-term changes and short-term changes, and they should take place over the next several years. What I also did was just try to illustrate here where our expenses are being driven and why they're being driven. The salary component here, as you see, the various bargaining units and other areas that we have salary schedules that are continued by law and generate increases in salary. So you can see where the salaries are being generated throughout the district. I think it's interesting to note one of the key components and difficult parts that we have controlling is the retirement aspect. The retirement costs from each system are going up significantly in terms of percentage increases. So it not only impacts what we have in terms of future increases, but it significantly impacts our current costs. And so anytime you see, and the ERS system was the one that went up the greatest, and it's up to over 18% right now going into the 2012-13 school year. So some significant increases that we're seeing from the retirement perspective. Again, if you jump over 2 columns, you look at the health insurance, and again, the same piece. That's an estimate of 8.5% increase, which I think in everybody's mind is fairly low, but the BOCES has been generating that type of increase, at least it generated last year. I know they're going to be very mindful in terms of the impact of premium increases on districts that participate in their service. But again, you can see the increase is just based on status quo of about $400,000 impact on health insurance premium increase. So overall, given salary and benefits, we're looking at a $1.87 or $1.8 million increase just because of that rollover budget with those costs. When we look at, we have talked about a wage freeze, and I think it's just important to note here, again, you look at the costs of retirement and health insurance increasing, even with no salary increases in any of the bargaining units or with any personnel, it's still almost an $800,000 increase in cost and expenditure costs of the district. So those are the parts that are impacting us that, again, when people talk about mandates or they talk about no control over it, those are parts that, pieces to the budget that we don't have any control over, but yet you can see the significant impact that you have, and that's over 2% on the local levy when you look at those increases alone. when you're looking at, and here is the estimate, the changes between a wage freeze, et cetera, the savings of that would be over $1 million in savings from a no increase or a wage freeze. So a significant part is that our contractual rollovers that require us to continue, moving staff members up step. Just to conclude, these are the budget sessions that are remaining, both board meetings and budget workshops. Our next budget workshop is the 28th. That's in the administration building. Again, we expect to have clarification on the maximum levy limit, and we'll start taking a look at, if further reductions are necessary, what needs to take place with those reductions. Any questions?
I have a question. Okay, and I know you've been going over this over and over again at every budget work session and every meeting, and it's the same thing, and, we all understand state aid is decreased, but, here it's the enrollment, the cuts are gonna be enrollment driven. We do not live in a transient district, and our kindergarten numbers are going up. And I understand that, at every meeting, it's always said that average kindergarten will be 20 and first grade will be 20, but, that's average throughout the whole district. So, you have kindergartens at some schools at 16, 17, and at other schools are 23 and 24. So now you push that number to 22, you're gonna have kindergartens at 25 and 26 at some schools, and 18, 19, 20 at others. So now, we don't live so where are the students going? Are they leaving the district? Because we're increasing our kindergarten. So if our cuts are gonna be enrollment driven, and this is just for me, because we know we're gonna have to make cuts because of the budget. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows, numbers aren't gonna lie. But, if I'm gonna make an educated decision and say, and we are the ones basically voting on the budget. We are the ones responsible. So if we're gonna make an educated decision and we're gonna cut based on enrollment, and where are the students going? Are they leaving the district? If kindergarten's increasing, where are they going?
Well,
Where are we getting the numbers?
again, the number of kindergartens there are projected at 259, so that's an increase.
Correct.
And you're right, typically when kids come to the district, they stay with us. There's not, and if you look at the enrollment projections, there's not a lot of discrepancy between kindergarten this year, first grade next year. 8th grade this year, 9th grade next year. We don't have the movement in or out of the district that you see in some other areas. What we've done is, this is addressed by building. So what you're seeing is an average of, say, 22, it won't go over 22 on average per building. What you have are certain conditions in buildings where principals may have a class size of 18 in one classroom, and then go up to 23 in another classroom, based on certain conditions that they believe should generate a lower class size. So there is discretion for the principals to make adjustments in their building based on what they feel is necessary for the kids in their room. You're right, this will increase up to 22. We're not pushing that level in many situations. And I would say where it's gonna be pushed is in our higher enrollment buildings, would be Armour and Union Pleasant. That's where you're gonna see it come closer to the 22.
I mean, and with all due respect, and it's already over that. So now I'm looking at, I have twins that are in kindergarten, I have 6 students, one, 2 not in, one in college, one not in the district, but 4 students in the elementary ages, 2 of them in kindergarten, and they're both in separate classes over 23. So now you're going to first grade. So now you have 2 in classes of 23, they're going to first grade. You're already dropping a teacher, okay? Because it goes from 6, because there's a special ed teacher in kindergarten, to first grade it goes to 5. So technically, same amount of class. So you're already at 25 regardless. So if you don't lose students, we're already at 25. And that's fine if the building principal thinks it's fine, but we need to present this to the public with, this is what it's gonna be. Because we all hear it.
Right.
You hear it, everybody here hears it. I'm sure Mr. Dills, who has children in every grade also, hears it every day, and they look at us like, so we need to present it with true, real numbers. So, if we're going to be having work sessions and presented this and presented the budget, and, yes, we will have to vote on cuts if it comes to that. but we need to know, okay, so where are we losing students?
Okay, what I'll do at the February 28th session is show each elementary building, what the average class size is based on their projected enrollment with we'll basically review the staffing worksheets that I base my numbers on here.
Mhm.
So we can show the exact projections, we can show where we are, and we can look at the averages at that point. We'll also have the special ed teachers listed below that and the number of co-teaching students that we're projecting in each class as well. Okay?
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay? Yeah. I know I changed it around today, so I have to take a look at it.
We have 4 people who have expressed an interest in presenting to us today. John Rosick, Bob Chiarelli, Kelly Harper, Martha Kavanaugh, and Sally Stevenson. We will give them each about 5 minutes or so. John?
Appreciate the opportunity to address the board. I'm here on behalf of the Hamburg Teachers Association, and specifically the 11 members of our staff, representing a collective 364 years of dedicated service to the Hamburg Central School District. By now, I'm sure you've all been briefed in regards to the effects that the proposed retirement incentive would have had the match goal 15 been reached. The projected savings to the district has been presented at $1.25 million. While 11 is not 15, the resultant impact of these, if these 11 are still allowed to retire, remains substantial, somewhere between $450,000 and $500,000. In these extremely difficult times, the necessity to embrace this type of savings is vital, and it remains the school board's obligation and responsibility with the needs of students and taxpayers at the fore. The HTA is intent on being a part of the solution. In order for that to occur, we are urging the Hamburg Central School District Board to do the right thing. Create an amended agreement that endorses the decision that the 11 teachers have made, while saving the district a substantial sum of money that can further reduce the budget deficit and the impacts that additional layoffs will have. It will take substantial courage and integrity to make such a bold decision, but yet, the alternative, as was outlined in last Thursday's presentation to the staff of the Hamburg Central School District, is to explode the number of layoffs from the anticipated 18 without addressing the additional $1.6 million budget gap. Honor the careers and the dedicated staff who have invested so much for so long, and help keep intact as much of the academics, sports, clubs, and activities by embracing a revised plan for our 11. These staff members have earned the right to be treated with respect and dignity and ought not be used as negotiating pawns. Collectively, we look forward to your response in the very near future. Thank you for your time and consideration in addressing this most crucial of matters.
Mr. Rosick, I know you realize that we cannot negotiate in public.
Absolutely.
So I think that probably the next step would be for you to set up a meeting to meet with the superintendent so that this can be discussed further. We do have a board meeting coming up on February 28th. Steve, can you meet with the negotiating teams between, maybe later this week?
I've thrown out times already. I would like to meet with the HTA prior to the end of this week. All you need to do is give me a time.
Can you maybe come up with a time so we can get that set, so we know we can move ahead on this?
We may have to do Friday, but yeah.
Well, Friday would be,
Can you
Jen,
commit
I
to
would think
Friday
you're right.
now?
Let's get it done before the end of this week, so
Let me
we
get
can
in
hear
touch with
something
Rob
more about
before
it.
I make a commitment.
Okay?
Good, Thank you. Okay, Mr. Turchiarelli, how do I say it?
Very good.
Is that okay?
Yeah, usually people don't get it the first time. Thank you again for your time. As some of you may not know, my name is Bob Turchiarelli. I just graduated from Hamburg last year. I'm currently studying business and accounting at Medai College right outside Buffalo. And my reason for being here this evening was just to address you guys and just to inform you of the effect that the health department had on me and my current college journey, basically. So, high school is a time to figure out who you are and who you want to be. Last year, I took 2 health classes here at Hamburg, life skills and stress management. These classes helped me learn more about myself, my classmates, and the adult world that awaits me. Life skills taught me how to properly fill out a job application, how to prepare for an interview. It taught me how to be safer on the internet and also how to effectively communicate with other people. Throughout the course, the class and I used journals to communicate our ideas, our thoughts and ideas to the teachers. They listened to us, provided us with advice and solutions to our problems and concerns. This interactive class allowed us to express ourselves and learn how to be successful and achieve our goals. I left that class feeling more confident than I ever had before. I now pay more attention to how I fill out applications. I feel prepared and ready to enter a job interview with confidence and personality. I know how to handle the stress of college life, and I even help those around me who never had the privilege of taking a life skills or stress management course. I'm currently now a member of my college's leadership program, and I also have a job as a student ambassador. I would never have pictured myself being so involved in my first year of college, especially considering how I used to be pretty shy in my early high school years. These courses help prepare me to step outside of my comfort zone and take more chances. I'm forever thankful for the health classes I took during my time at Hamburg, and I sincerely hope more students have the opportunity to learn and benefit from these classes in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Helen, can I add on to what you said though? Just real quick, it's mandatory to take a business or a technology class in our school, and a life skills and health class. But a lot of the kids in 9th and 10th grade take a keyboarding class, and that's the extent of their business credit. So the kids don't go on with business, and they don't get the